Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be spending this very talk today on the topic of finding true humility in changing times. I'm excited to be here with all of you today, and today I'll be sharing about change and how that went for me. I think for many years in my life, I have always heard the notion of change is always a constant, but in actuality, when I was going through times of change, I've always found myself seeing the worst of myself, seeing the negative side of things, and I was drowning in them. And it was till late on in my life when I came to learn about the value of true humility, which I wrote a book about and launched it sometime back in the year 2020. It's been really quite a transformative journey. So I'm excited to kickstart today with a story. So in change, I think one of the first things that I discovered was change was a vicious cycle for me. So let's take a step back, and I'd like to share with you a little bit more about my journey. So I recall when I was growing up, and the family, myself and my family, we went on a holiday to Australia. And I recall at the time I was having good time, good fun, and I was just coming towards the end of my trip in Melbourne, Australia. And I recalled Dad and Mom had put myself and my older brother aside and say, Gavin, what do you think about the time that you've spent in Melbourne so far? What do you enjoy from that? I recall at the time when I was in my holiday period, spending close to about 2 weeks there, I recall saying to Dad and Mom, Dad, Mom, I am happy, I like what I see. And coming from that holiday lens, I said yes to Dad and Mom. And so the next day, when we came back to Singapore, which is the place that I was born and raised in, Dad and Mom told myself and my older brother that we are moving to Australia next year. So I hope that you have got your hearts and your minds ready, and we're going to make a new change in your life. So in saying yes at a time when I was in Australia, I did not know that I was about to say yes to a wall of paint. So what I actually went through in my life was having to undergo 7 schools in 7 years between the age of 10 and 17 in Singapore and Australia. Now, probably some of you might be thinking, wow, Gavin, you are indeed going through or have gone through a lot of changes in your life. So I recall the first time when I first had arrived in a new place, a new environment. I recall that it was really difficult. And in fact, I had to undergo severe bullying, racism, ostracism, just to name a few of the struggles that I went through because of this change in a new schooling environment across 2 different cities, that I found myself really struggling to find my better self. And I recalled when I was going through my time at school, there was this one incident that I'm about to share with all of you that took a lot out of me during a moment of significant change. So if I'm sharing this story with all of you, I'm doing this with courage, and I hope that in sharing this story, it would allow us to take one step forward in a positive direction shortly. So I recall one time I was in a school field. I was playing a game of sports with my classmates in the school field. And I recall that I was playing a game of football, soccer. Probably some of you here today enjoying that too. And I recall that I was really exhausted, just like you would in a school field game that you spend your recess break playing. So after 30 minutes of playing in the school field, I recalled I was really tired. And I recalled that I was just looking down the ground and I was panting. I was like really tired. So I was looking down the ground, and the first time when I looked up, I saw a boy running at me at full speed. Now, at that time, I recall I sensed danger. And when you sense danger, I think your reflex will tell you, Gavin, take a few steps back because something's about to happen and you need to prevent that. Now, as I started to walk backwards, I saw another classmate of mine locking my arms behind me, and a third boy put his entire body legs, grabbing onto my 2 legs, making sure I was pinned to the ground. I recall I could see trouble coming, but there was little I could do. As I was about to see the boy approach me, my arms released and I was pushed over the third boy that was standing behind me. And because of that impact, I went flipping 180 degrees in the sky, and bam, I landed on my right wrist right into the hot, sunny ground at 1:35 p.m. I still recall the time on the clock. Right at the moment when I had found myself landing straight into the ground, I recalled feeling like my whole world had just gone blank, and I did not know what to do. I recall the time I started to break down, as you can imagine in such a scenario. And as I was lying on the ground, I recalled feeling a lot of things. I found myself feeling humiliated. There must have been hundreds of different schoolmates of mine that have must have seen that incident, and I felt so scared. Very soon, the three classmates of mine stood around me in a circle. They decided to laugh at me, and they left the school field. They headed back to class. And I recalled feeling so scared, so alone, and I was in a world of pain. I recall I looked up to the sky and asked myself two questions. One, why is this change happening to me? And how did I find myself getting here? Now, I recall at the time I was on the school field, I was sprawling across the school field, as you can imagine, and I recall I was squatting down and I was looking in the front direction of my purview, my front view, and I recall standing up, and it felt like, although the distance from here to the nurse's office, the school general office, where I needed to get help for my hurt wrist, felt like maybe in reality 50 meters, but from where I was at, it felt like 1,000 miles away. I was like, Gavin, that is going to be the loneliest walk that you probably have to take at that age of 13 in that incident. Slowly, gradually, I held onto my wrist and I walked myself to the nurse's office, the school teacher, called my parents. I was taken to a nearby hospital. My arm was right in that cast. Now, the next day, Gavin had to go back to school, right? And I recall at the time, I'm about to introduce or be reintroduced back into the classroom. And I think many of you, if you put on the hat of empathy and kindness, you'll probably be thinking, Gavin, you need to embrace yourself because you don't know what's about to come again. Now, I recall I was standing outside the school gate that morning, and I recalled that I was doing this exact motion I'm about to share with all of you today. I was like, Gavin, should you go? Should you not? Should you go? Should you not? Now, finally, on the last, should you go? I said, okay, let's go. So my heart was racing as I was approaching the classroom door. It went something like, duk, 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 duk. As I approached the classroom door, I'm like, Gavin, take a deep breath because you don't know what's about to happen, but do your best. Try to embrace what's about to come. So I'm like, okay, Gavin, take a deep breath. So I'm like, and as I opened the door, I found myself closer to the seat, closer to the classroom door. And just when I sat down, I heard two kicks to the back channel to my seat, and I turned around. My chin hit the table, and I turned around, and I was like, my goodness, I did not realize I just sat behind the same three classmates of mine in that school field incident that I shared the previous day. And they told me, Gavin, warmest welcome back to class. All right, a warmest welcome back. Now, when someone says that in the tones, in the way that I just expressed them, I think probably what you can sense is, Gavin, I don't think they meant well. It meant something like, the next time you step back into that school field, we're watching you, and you better be sure that you know what's coming for you. So now, why did I share this story this morning with all of us here? There were a couple of perspectives I needed to come to in order to turn my change, which was a vicious cycle for me for far too long, into something that had started to turn the page and turn the cycle and change the perspective and change the process of how I view life. But I had to start from this. So recalling the time, I was 13 years of age. This year, by the way, for your information, I'm 30. For many years, my perspective was this: in the moment, in the present, in the now, in the today. When I was 13, I wasn't thinking about what's ahead of me, what's coming ahead of me. All I was thinking about was this: Gavin, can you take one step to tomorrow, just tomorrow? That's all I ask from you. And embrace your change that's coming with courage and resilience. And did I do that? I think I did. Because in that incident, I recall the next day, I was standing outside of the school gate, and I was like, Gavin, should you go, should you not? Finally, I did. And because I've been doing this day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year, 17 years on, that's why I'm here. I get to tell my story because I have started to turn my change, which was vicious, my struggles that was painful, into hope, courage, resilience, and that saved me. And I'm eternally grateful for that. So now we've talked about change through my formative years, the struggles that I went through. Now, before we get into the next part, I thought to take a step back to spend some time on reflections. I recall for many years when I was going through changes, much like some of you do, I found myself feeling some of these emotions, and it came in blocks of phases of emotional outlook. The first was I found myself feeling really lost. When we're going through change, sometimes we can ask questions like, what happens if I don't get through this change? What happens if this change makes me feel or see the worst in myself? At some stage, I found myself feeling that way. Anxiety. Anxiety is like if you wake up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. and you're like, why am I wide awake? I should be asleep, preparing for work, preparing for school, and yet I am feeling so tense. Is there something wrong with me? Should I change myself? I think many of us might start to feel that reflection bubbling up. Now, last thing is fear. Fear is like you close your two eyes and you look into tomorrow, just tomorrow, not the far future. If today is already like this, how can tomorrow be better? So we have this fear, and we're like, I hope tomorrow doesn't come because I feel like the world should just swallow me in and take my problem away and make it dissipate. So for some years, I found myself feeling fear. Why does life always look so sad? When can I ever be happy? If you're feeling this way today, I can relate to you. For many years, change was my vicious cycle, and I could not see turning points. As a 13-year-old, as a 14-year-old, all the way up to the age of about 20 to 21, I persisted. I stayed resilient. I never wanted to give up. I knew that as long as I take step-by-step approaches, the process of progress is going to get me, hopefully, to the right pathway. And I found that through the value of true humility. So many years later, I came to learn about true humility, and this shaped the course of my life. And I came to learn about this value through books and materials that were passed on to my inner circle of people that were supporting me during my tough times. And I recall the first time I heard of the quote, C.S. Lewis, he once said that true humility is not thinking less of yourself, but is thinking yourself less. I think that struck a deep chord with me, and I wanted to know more. I wanted to find out more. Tell me, Gavin, what is true humility? Now, before we get into it, I'm going to put us on a cliffhanger for a moment, and we'll just talk a little bit about the emotional cycles that many of us do sometimes come to. Some of us might find ourselves staying in the positive side, and we start off well during a good period and a new phase in a new environment. We say that I can do it, I'm coping well. But how is it that some of us might later on go on to find ourselves in negative perspectives? I can't deal with this, I give up. So I found myself constantly going from negative self to a positive self, and sometimes staying in negative self for far too long, and I didn't appreciate that. And so I came to learn about this value, which I'm about to share with all of you. So C.S. Lewis once said that true humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's about thinking yourself less. And in actuality, what I came to discover, and this is my working definition that I talk about in my book, it's about embracing your strengths and your weaknesses equally. Strengths and weaknesses into your situation. Strengths and weaknesses into moments of changes sometimes feel like it's bringing you ups and downs. And what I came to realize is this. So for many years, I found myself on the red side. See, the colors, they do make a difference. When we see our weaknesses, sometimes what do we feel? We feel resentment, frustration, anger. We don't know what to do. And when we're drowning, the thoughts start to come up. Gavin, you continue to have no friends at school. Gavin, you continue to struggle with confidence because your classmates are cutting you out. Gavin, you continue to see a negative vision for tomorrow. And I was drowning in it. I was like, why? Why am I going through this? But what I came to realize later on is that it takes humility to realize that you have strengths too. You just have not seen it yet in application, in reality. So it's about, although you have no friends, but Gavin, you had the courage to pick yourself up and go again. Although you were low in confidence, but Gavin, did you have faith and patience? Yes, you did. Although you might be lost in life, but do you have the resilience to never give up? And I did too. So today my encouragement to us is in coming to our everyday perspectives in times of change, it's about embracing our strengths, calling them out, especially when we don't see it, and acknowledge your weaknesses. That is okay. That is not okay right now. Now, changes I came to learn through this method that I call ART. So for our friends in Singapore in this part of the world, what was ART in the past couple of years for us? It stands for the antigen rapid test, what we call the COVID-19 swab test, right? So I recall at the time I was running my book and I was so aware of my physical health doing the swab test, and it came to my awareness that, Gavin, but what about up here? How often are you doing your humility swab test, your mental swab test? And I realized I needed the concept to do that. So today let's walk through on this. So we start with assess, reflect, and think. See, assess is not something like this. It's like You see, when we are stressed, when in the time of change, we want to sometimes subconsciously go running to our problem and we find ourselves drowning in the problem. But what I came to realize is this: assess means that no. Take away from the temptation to go chasing a problem, take a few steps back and calm down. Clearly assess your strengths and your weaknesses first. Now, when you're a lot more ready, you go into the situation on reflection. What do I hope to achieve? To be a better person and to seek continuous growth. And now finally, going into the thing, it's about what can I control versus what I cannot control. How do I learn to let it go? So slowly, gradually, humility will take us to learn and apply, assess, reflect, and think. So now today, my life has taken me to the next step, and it's a beautiful story that has started to evolve into a healing process. So today, through my book and through my sharings, I've impacted hopefully thousands of lives, and I've been receiving really encouraging messages like the ones I'm sharing here. They're so inspiring. You have such a good heart, and I appreciate that. But I think the key here for me is not only about change, it's about seeing the change that I wanted to see in the times that continuously evolve. And I'm so glad that I had the courage to share my story, that today thousands of lives, the youth in different schools gets to hear my story and say that, Gavin, I can relate to you. The struggles that you're in today, I have been there before, but I am so encouraged that you have learned to bounce back in your changes and you never gave up. And I think that's the key. For many of us, we need to see someone living it out, and we go together with the application to want to see a positive change in our lives too. So to end off today's TEDx talk, be the change you want to see in this world. Mahatma Gandhi once said this, but not just any change, right? So let's calibrate it to be the true humility, positive change that you want to see in your world. So the key thing is about applying your strengths and weaknesses, balancing that, and learning to apply a positive vision for tomorrow in your world will make a big difference. Thank you very much.